I am about to narrate an incident that happened with me and my wife. This is from the time when we had just gotten married. We were planning a honeymoon trip. When I asked my friends for suggestions, they all said the same thing, that they had gone to the mountainous areas of Pakistan for their honeymoon. Now, since we were residents of Karachi, I had never traveled to the mountains in my entire life. For people from Karachi, the maximum enjoyment usually means going to sea view, visiting Clifton, or sitting at Dudaria and having food. Traveling alone to mountainous regions, especially with your wife, is not an easy decision. Going with friends is one thing. You can gather some courage. But this was a new marriage. I had no idea about the environment there. I didn't know what the security situation was like. Before this, I had never traveled alone outside Karachi. Yes, once I had gone to Lahore for a cousin's wedding, but that too with the entire family. The real issue was that my wife was insisting as well. She really wanted to see the mountains. In fact, in anger, she even said that she had married me only so that she could go on a honeymoon to the mountainous areas. We greatly appreciated her noble intention, and even told her that for such a pure purpose behind marrying me, Allah would surely reward her greatly. Anyway, now going had become unavoidable. It had turned into a matter of my manhood. Everyone kept saying, "You're not a child. Why are you scared of going to the mountains?" Slowly, this thing became famous in the family, that Abdul Rahman is a very cowardly man, scared of traveling to mountainous areas with his wife. Gossip started everywhere. It felt like people had nothing else to do in the world. Everyone's eyes were on us. The suspense had grown so much that it felt like an India versus Pakistan World Cup final was about to happen. Whoever came to meet us, the very first question they asked, whether at home or at some gathering, was, "So Abdul Rahman, what's the plan? When are you going to the mountains?" It felt like people had made a joke out of us, because all those scoundrels would ask the question and then lower their heads and laugh. That day crossed all limits. We had been invited by one of my grandfather's relatives. He was extremely old, so weak that he couldn't even walk on his own. When we sat down at the dining spread, 3 men were holding him and helping him sit. He was also very hard of hearing. I greeted him several times, but instead of replying, he handed me the bowl of yogurt that was lying in front of him. After we finished eating, he asked me, "So tell me, son Abdul Rahman, what's your plan? When are you going to the mountainous areas?" As soon as he said this, everyone sitting there started smiling. I felt deeply embarrassed. I lowered my head in silence. Inside, I was burning with anger. Then he opened his mouth again and said, "Son, if you're feeling scared, then if you want, I can come along with you on your honeymoon." The moment he said this, the entire gathering burst into laughter. Meanwhile, inside my heart, I angrily thought, "Old man, you need 3 people just to take you to the bathroom, and you're so worried about my honeymoon that you're ready to come along." Anyway, that very night we made a firm decision. We would go no matter what. When we got home and told my wife about the decision, she started dancing with happiness. From the very next day, preparations began at home. We started packing our belongings. We had heard that mountainous areas are extremely cold, and since people from Karachi don't really own warm clothes, we decided to take extra warm clothing. Quilts, blankets, everything. In short, we began buying and packing all kinds of supplies. Seeing the amount of luggage, everyone was shocked and started saying, "Are you going on a honeymoon or shifting there permanently?" But we didn't want to take any risks. Who knew how many days we might have to stay there? Keeping security in mind, we decided to travel in our own car, no matter how long the journey might be. We wanted to use only our own vehicle, because I never liked traveling in buses or public transport. There are all kinds of strange people, and especially when your wife is with you, it feels even more uncomfortable. The entire family came to see us off. Everyone waved goodbye to us, and we waved back. And this is how our journey finally began. We left at 7 o'clock in the morning. My wife kept falling asleep from time to time, but I kept driving continuously. I may have stopped once or twice for the restroom, but other than that, I kept the car moving non-stop. My goal was to enter Punjab before sunset because there were certain areas of Sindh that I wanted to cross only in daylight. At night, those areas become extremely dangerous. The distance from Karachi to Lahore is approximately 17 to 18 hours. So you can imagine that by around 10 or 11 at night, we had reached Lahore. Our first stop was Lahore itself. We booked a hotel there. The exhaustion was so intense that the moment we lay down, we fell asleep. At 8 o'clock the next morning, we resumed our journey. By around 11 or 12 noon, we had reached Islamabad. From there, the next route was towards Murree. In Islamabad, my wife got busy shopping, and no matter how much I tried to convince her, she wouldn't stop. Between eating and shopping, it was already around 6 o'clock in the evening. For the first time in my life, I saw mountains. Seeing mountains in a city like Islamabad felt unreal. I kept staring at them again and again, just like a child seeing something new for the very first time. My plan wasn't to stay in Murree. I wanted to go straight to Nathia Gali. When we reached Murree Road, I asked a taxi driver how far Nathia Gali was from Murree. He replied casually, "Sir, it's very close." Now, I had no idea back then. There was no Google Maps in those days. When he said, "very close," I assumed it was right nearby. The drive to Murree itself took around 1 to 1.5 hours. When we finally reached Murree, there was a board right in front of us that read, Nathia Gali, 38 kilometers. I quickly calculated in my head that if I drove at 120 kilometers per hour, we would reach Nathia Gali in about 20 minutes. But that turned out to be my biggest mistake. In mountainous roads with countless zigzags and sharp turns, the maximum speed is only around 30 to 40 kilometers per hour. But in my foolish confidence that I could drive at 120, I turned the car towards Nathia Gali. By that time, it was already 9 o'clock at night. In those days, the roads at that hour were completely deserted. Only an occasional vehicle could be seen. On top of that, due to landslides, the road conditions were terrible. Again and again, I had to stop the car. And anyway, mountain driving itself is. This was my very first journey through a mountainous region. Any illusion of driving at 120 kilometers per hour had shattered long ago. I was now crawling at a speed of barely 10 to 15 kilometers per hour. It was nighttime. Deep ravines on one side, mountains on the other, and a man behind the wheel who had never seen mountains in his entire life. Just looking at those deep valleys made my legs tremble. Still, I kept pushing the car forward slowly and carefully. The wife who had been so excited about visiting the mountains, one look at her face was enough to tell how terrified she had become. She wasn't looking right or left. Her eyes were fixed straight ahead, and her lips were constantly moving in silent prayers. I said to her, "Say something at least. The place is already so deserted, and now you've gone completely silent too." She scolded me sharply. "Just stay quiet and keep your eyes on the road." And then the one thing that was still left to happen, happened. Our tire got punctured. The car came to a complete stop in that silent wilderness. Our friends had even frightened us by saying that mountain lions roam in these areas. I looked at my wife, and she looked back at me. I looked at her in a way as if silently asking her to gather some courage and go change the tire herself. But the deadly look in her eyes made it clear. This task was mine. Jokes aside, when I stepped out of the car that night, my condition was genuinely terrible. I was extremely scared of wild animals. It truly felt as if at any moment, some beast would emerge from the darkness and tear me apart. I was cursing all those relatives who had encouraged me and pushed me into this trip. The condition I was in during that lonely journey is something I can't even describe in words. There was also the fear that a landslide might suddenly occur, or some dangerous animal might appear, or worse, that something unseen might reveal itself in this dark wilderness. I quickly opened the trunk, took out the spare tire, pulled out the tools, and began loosening the nuts of the punctured tire. I had barely loosened 3 nuts when I heard a whistling sound coming from somewhere far away. I heard it clearly. It wasn't an ordinary sound. It was a sharp, proper whistle, the kind people make by putting 2 fingers in their mouth. The point is, it was a real whistle.
It was definitely a sound. It wasn't an animal, and it wasn't my ears playing tricks on me. My wife slightly rolled down the window and asked, "Did you make that whistling sound?" I looked at her angrily and replied, "My dear, you're not so beautiful that I'd be whistling for you while changing a tire." After hearing this, she immediately rolled the window back up. I was getting even more irritated. First of all, I was here because of her. At the very least, she could have stepped out of the car and stood beside me. But instead, she stayed crouched inside the car, repeatedly asking from inside how much longer it would take. From the front of the car, I kept giving her very rude replies. At one point, I even said, I don't know about the tire, but if some wild animal shows up, it won't take long for you to become a widow. With trembling hands and constant prayers, I quickly changed the tire and got back inside the car. As soon as I sat down, I noticed my wife staring continuously in one direction. I asked her, "Is everything okay? What are you looking at?" She replied, "Look over there behind that tree. I can see some kind of shadow." When I looked in the direction she pointed to, it was the exact same place from where the whistling sound had come earlier. I slightly turned the car and pointed the headlights toward that tree. Both of us saw it. There was a shadow. It was a very strange shadow. It felt as if some wild animal, something like a wolf, had suddenly hidden behind the tree after seeing the headlights. Just seeing that shadow terrified me so much that I froze. I kept staring in that direction and completely forgot how to drive. It was only when my wife started screaming, "Get us out of here, quickly," that I came back to my senses. I had barely pressed the accelerator when the same tree, from where the whistle had come and where we had seen that shadow, collapsed and fell down, meaning if our car had been even 1 inch ahead, that tree would have fallen directly onto us. The road was now completely blocked. We were standing all alone on that road. I had completely panicked. Death felt right in front of my eyes. In anger, I said to my wife, "Now enjoy your honeymoon. I told you so many times not to come here. Traveling alone here isn't safe. But you were desperate to see the mountains. And now in these very mountains our graves would be made here." I was completely shaken. At that time, how old was I? Around 19 or 20 years old. My wife was just 18. Both of us were sitting there, praying desperately that Allah would somehow get us out of that place. We promised that we would never come to the mountains again. At that very moment, it felt as if someone jumped onto the roof of our car. The first thought that came to mind was that it must be some wild animal. It was clearly moving on top of the car. Out of sheer terror, both of us started trembling. I began banging loudly on the car's roof with my hands, hoping that whatever animal it was would climb down. But after a few moments, something even more terrifying happened. From above, the same kind of banging started. The exact same rhythm. The way I was hitting the roof, someone from above was copying it exactly. Now, an animal cannot do this. If an animal hears such noise, it usually runs away. But this was something completely unnatural. Whatever was on the roof was mimicking my movements perfectly. My wife immediately started reciting Ayat al-Kursi loudly. The moment she started reciting, the sound from above suddenly stopped. There was no movement on the roof anymore. No footsteps. No noise. The most shocking thing was this. Whatever had been on top of the car disappeared without ever climbing down. Then I looked toward the fallen tree, the same tree that had blocked the road. Near it, I started seeing many shadows. They looked as if they were jumping. Since the car's headlights were pointed toward the tree, both of us could clearly see them. These shadows were extremely strange. The first shadow we had seen earlier looked like a wolf-like animal, but these new shadows looked completely different, as if they were covered in black sheets, as if someone had wrapped themselves entirely in black cloth. My wife was screaming uncontrollably, and I was screaming too. This horrifying scene continued for some time. Then suddenly it felt like we were hit by a powerful impact. The airbags in our car deployed. Due to the shock, we remained unconscious for an unknown amount of time. It felt as if I was in a dream, hearing distant voices. When I finally opened my eyes, I saw several people standing outside the car, knocking on the door. For a moment, I couldn't even understand where I was. My wife was lying unconscious. The airbags in front of us had already deployed. Outside, people were knocking on our car doors. When I slightly opened the window, they asked, "Are you both okay?" I replied, "By Allah's grace, how are you?" They were probably surprised by my response. Here they were asking about our condition, and I was asking about theirs. Anyway, they helped me out of the car. With them was a woman, perhaps his wife or sister-in-law. They took my wife out as well and seated her in their car. When I looked up at the sky, the first rays of morning were spreading. It was already dawn. That meant we had been unconscious for several hours. While sitting in their car, I looked back at our vehicle. The rear of our car was completely crushed. It looked as if it had been hit by an elephant, or by something unimaginably powerful. The entire back portion had caved in, right up to the area behind the driver and passenger seats where we had been sitting. Everyone kept asking me, "Did you have an accident?" But if another car had hit us, that car should have been there as well. The amount of damage our car had suffered. Whatever hit us should have shown signs of impact too. I immediately stepped out thinking, what if the vehicle that hit us fell into the ravine after crashing into us? When I shared this thought, those people came with me. All of us looked down into the ravine, searching for any sign of a fallen vehicle. There was nothing. No car. No trace at all. After some time, a crane arrived and removed the fallen tree from the road. I had no choice but to have my car towed away. We never made it to Nathia Gali. From there, we took a taxi back to Islamabad, and from Islamabad, we flew straight to Karachi. The truth is, our lives were saved that night. What exactly happened to us, I still don't know. What hit our car with such terrifying force? If it really was another vehicle, where did it disappear? At that time, my car was a Toyota Corolla, known for being solid like a rock. If that car was crushed so badly, the vehicle that hit us should have been destroyed as well. But nothing made sense. No other car was ever found. The fallen tree in the middle of the night, the whistling sound, someone jumping on our car's roof, those shadows we saw, nothing about that night was normal. The only thing to be grateful for is that we survived. It has now been 25 years since our marriage. We have never turned toward the mountains again. My friends still invite me to travel with them, but believe me, I don't have the courage anymore. I never want to pass through those roads again and relive that terrifying night.